Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about a powerful force that has shaped destinies, moved mountains, and given strength to the hopeless faith. Faith is not just a word, it is the invisible energy that helps us overcome life's toughest challenges. Faith can remove doubts, fears, and obstacles standing in our way. Faith can transform impossibilities into possibilities, my friends. Faith is not just about religion, it is about life. It is the power that keeps us moving when everything around us says stop. It removes fear, doubt, limitations, obstacles, negativity, failure, and impossibility. Faith truly can remove anything, so hold on to your faith, nurture it, and let it guide you to the life you are destined to live. Faith removes fear because faith acts as a light that enters a place of darkness and instantly changes the atmosphere. When fear takes over, it clouds the mind and shakes the heart, making a person feel weak and uncertain. But faith becomes the force that lifts the spirit and gives courage to faith. What once seemed terrifying faith is not about denying the existence of fear. It is about refusing to allow fear to control the outcome. It is about holding on to a belief so strong that no matter how loud fear screams, faith whispers louder, reminding you that you are not alone and that victory is possible. When a person has faith, the fear of failure loses its strength because faith gives assurance that even if one falls, there will be strength to rise again. Many people never take a step forward because they are paralyzed by the thought of failing, but faith pushes them to move despite the fear. It says, do not worry about falling, just start walking. Faith reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. With faith, the heart gains boldness, and the mind finds peace. Fear also grows when we face the unknown, because human beings like certainty and comfort zones, but life often demands stepping into uncharted territories. Faith is what removes the terror of uncertainty. It tells us that even though we cannot see the full picture, there is a greater purpose guiding us. Faith is like a compass that does not always show the entire map, but gives confidence that the direction is right and that every step taken in trust will eventually lead to the right destination. When faith leads the way, the shadows of the unknown no longer scare us. Fear often exaggerates problems, making mountains out of molehills, but faith shrinks those mountains and gives us courage to climb over them. Faith removes the illusion that difficulties are bigger than us. It assures us that no matter how tall the mountain looks, there is always a path to the top. And sometimes faith even moves the mountain altogether. Fear makes people see obstacles, while faith makes them see opportunities. Where fear says impossible, faith answers with possible. Fear says you cannot, faith replies with you will. Faith also strengthens the heart in moments of crisis. When fear would normally take control during times of sickness, loss, or disappointment, fear tries to whisper that there is no hope, but faith holds the hand of hope tightly and refuses to let go. Faith says healing is possible, restoration is near, and tomorrow holds better days. It gives comfort in the storm and keeps the soul anchored so that even when everything around is falling apart, the inner spirit remains unshaken. Because faith has built a foundation stronger than fear. Another way faith removes fear is by teaching trust in God. Trust in the process, trust in the unseen, and trust in one's own ability to overcome. When a person learns to trust, fear no longer dominates. Trust is the bedrock of faith, and it builds an inner assurance that no matter what the outcome is, it will be for the best. Fear loses its grip because the heart chooses trust over panic. Think about all the great achievements in history. Every invention, every discovery, every act of bravery started with someone who had to face fear, refused to bow to it. They had faith in their vision, faith in their mission, faith in themselves, and many had faith in God. That faith carried them through nights of doubt and days of hardship until they reached their goal. If they had allowed fear to win, the world would have been robbed of countless breakthroughs. But faith removed fear and opened doors that fear wanted to keep closed in our own lives. Fear may try to whisper that we are not good enough, not strong enough, not capable enough, but faith rises and declares that we are more than capable, that we are stronger than we realize, that we are equipped for the journey. Faith gives us the voice to silence those inner doubts and the power to step forward boldly. Faith is the antidote to fear, and when nurtured daily through prayer, through positive belief, and through action, it becomes unshakable. So faith truly removes fear. It does not mean life will always be easy. It does not mean challenges will disappear, but it means fear will no longer rule the heart. It means courage will be stronger than worry. It means hope will shine brighter than doubt. and it means peace will overcome anxiety. Once a person embraces faith, fear loses its power forever, and in its place comes strength, confidence, and the determination to move forward no matter what. Faith removes doubt, because doubt is the silent thief of dreams, and the quiet voice that makes people question their worth, their ability, and their future. Doubt keeps the heart unsettled, and the mind restless. It makes every decision heavier and every challenge seem impossible. But faith is the answer that dissolves this uncertainty. Faith shines like a guiding star in the night, reminding us that even though we cannot see the whole path ahead, journey will take us where we need to go. Faith builds an inner confidence that no obstacle, no delay, and no failure can completely destroy. When doubt says you cannot, faith says you can. When doubt asks, what if you fall? Faith replies, what if you fly? Doubt is like a chain around the feet, holding people back from progress, but faith is the key that breaks those chains and allows movement. Doubt paralyzes action, while faith energizes it. Without faith, people hesitate, second guess themselves, and often abandon their goals. But with faith, hesitation turns into bold steps, and second thoughts turn into determined choices. Doubt often comes from focusing on limitations. We look at what we lack instead of what we already have. We compare ourselves with others and begin to believe that we are not enough. But faith changes that perspective. It tells us that what we carry inside is greater than any limitation outside. Faith reminds us that strength is not measured by resources alone, but by resilience, courage, and perseverance. Doubt makes us blind to possibility, but faith opens our eyes to opportunities that were always there waiting for us to notice another way. Faith removes doubt is by strengthening our trust in timing. Many times doubt grows when we do not see immediate results. We pray, we work, we try, and when success does not appear instantly, doubt whispers, maybe it will never happen. But faith calms that voice and teaches patience. It tells us that delay is not denial, and that every seed needs time to grow. Faith gives us the peace to wait and the hope to keep moving forward even when results are not visible. Yet doubt cannot survive in a heart that truly trusts in perfect timing. Doubt also grows when fear of failure dominates the mind. People hesitate to start because they imagine falling before they even take the first step. But faith teaches that failure is not the end, it is simply part of the journey. Faith tells us that falling is temporary, but growth is permanent. When faith rules the heart, every setback becomes a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block. Doubt sees failure as proof to stop, but faith sees failure as proof to keep learning and keep trying until success comes. History is filled with examples of people who silenced doubt through faith. If inventors listened to doubt, the world would not have airplanes or electricity. If leaders listened to doubt, nations would never have risen. If everyday men and women listened to doubt, many victories in personal lives would never have been achieved. What they all had in common was not an absence of challenges, but a presence of faith. They believed even when others doubted them, and that belief carried them to places that doubt tried to keep locked away in our own lives. Doubt may appear when we face decisions about our career, relationships, or dreams. It may whisper that we are too late, too old, too inexperienced, or too weak. But faith speaks louder and says there is no such thing as too late when purpose is alive inside of you. Faith reminds us that each day is a new opportunity to begin again, and that the strength within is always greater than the challenge ahead. Doubt makes us question who we are, while faith affirms that we are capable, worthy, and destined for more. Faith also removes doubt by giving us peace in uncertainty. We may not know how things will turn out, but faith tells us that we do not need to know everything to keep moving forward. Faith builds trust, that even if the path looks unclear, one step at a time will still lead to the right destination. Doubt demands all the answers before we begin, but faith says begin, and the answers will reveal themselves along the way. This shift in mind set is what transforms a doubtful heart into a confident one. So faith truly removes doubt. It does not erase questions, but it gives the courage to live without being paralyzed by them. It does not eliminate obstacles, but it provides the belief that obstacles can be overcome. It does not remove every struggle, but it gives assurance that struggles can be turned into victories. When faith grows, doubt shrinks and eventually loses its hold. Faith reminds us that we are guided, supported, and equipped to face anything, and because of this, doubt cannot last in a heart filled with faith. Faith removes limitations, because limitations are often not in the world around us, but in the mind within us. Many times, people stop themselves from reaching their highest Potential not because of what others tell them, but because of the invisible walls they build in their own thinking. When someone believes they cannot achieve something, that belief becomes a limitation. When they think their background or circumstances define their future, that thought becomes a limitation. But faith tears down those walls and opens doors that once seemed locked. Faith does not ask, what do I lack? Faith asks, what do I have, and how can it grow? Faith transforms impossibility into possibility, because it sees beyond the limits of logic and into the power of belief. Limitations can come in many forms. They may be physical, financial, emotional, or even social, but faith is stronger than all of them. Faith looks at a mountain and says it can be climbed. Faith looks at an empty pocket and says provision will come. Faith looks at weakness and says strength will rise. Faith refuses to be caged by what appears to be unchangeable. It does not deny reality, but it chooses to believe that reality can be changed. Faith gives us the courage to face our weaknesses and transform them into areas of strength. Many people live with self-imposed limitations. They convince themselves they are not talented enough, not educated enough, not connected enough. But faith erases that mindset. Faith teaches that every person is created with gifts and abilities waiting to be developed. It reminds us that success is not reserved for a chosen few, but for those who dare to believe limitations are nothing but lies dressed as truth. And faith is the voice that uncovers the lies and declares you can do more than you think you can. Limitations are also often the result of past failures. When someone fails repeatedly, they begin to believe that success is impossible, but faith rewrites that story. It says, past does not define the future, and one failure or even many failures cannot block destiny. Faith gives us the courage to try again and again until the breakthrough comes. Where doubt says give up, faith whispers keep going. Faith removes the weight of yesterday and gives wings for tomorrow. One of the most powerful things about faith is that it changes perspective. When a person looks at life with eyes of limitation, every problem appears larger than it is. But when they look with eyes of faith, every problem appears smaller, because faith magnifies the power within rather than the obstacle outside. Faith tells us that obstacles are temporary, but determination is permanent. It shifts focus from what we cannot control to what we can do, and in that shift, limitations lose their grip. Throughout history, some of the greatest achievements came from people who refused to accept limitations. Inventors who had no resources yet created masterpieces. Leaders who were underestimated yet changed nations. Individuals who started with nothing yet rose to greatness. They were not defined by their lack, but by their faith. They believed in a vision greater than their circumstances, and that belief destroyed every limitation that tried to stop them. Faith is the common thread in every story of triumph over impossibility in everyday life. Faith continues to remove limitations. It allows a student who thinks they cannot pass an exam to study harder and succeed. It allows a struggling family to believe they can rise above poverty and work toward a better future. It allows someone facing illness to believe in healing and find the strength to fight on. Faith becomes the fuel that pushes people beyond the boundaries of what seems realistic into the realm of what is achievable. Faith also teaches us to see limitations not as permanent barriers, but as temporary challenges. They are not meant to stop us, but to shape us into stronger versions of ourselves. Faith shows us that the wall we think is blocking us may actually be guiding us to a better path. It turns frustration into patience and resistance into resilience. Once a person has faith, even limitations begin to work in their favor, because faith has the power to turn every setback into a setup for a greater comeback. So faith truly removes limitations. It changes our thinking, it strengthens our actions, it renews our hope, and it expands our possibilities. What once looked like an unbreakable barrier becomes a stepping stone. What once looked like an end becomes a beginning. Faith does not allow us to be trapped by excuses or circumstances. Instead, it empowers us to rise beyond them. With faith, the impossible becomes possible. Unreachable becomes attainable, and the unimaginable becomes reality. There are no true limits when faith is alive in the heart, because faith knows no boundaries, and faith always finds a way. Faith removes obstacles, because obstacles are a natural part of life. And no journey to success or fulfillment comes without them. Some obstacles are external, like financial struggles, health challenges, or lack of support, while others are internal, like fear, self-doubt, or discouragement. But no matter the form, faith has the power to turn every obstacle into a stepping stone. Faith does not ignore the presence of difficulty, but it changes the way we see it. Instead of viewing obstacles as walls that cannot be crossed, faith helps us see them as opportunities to grow stronger and rise higher. Faith is the voice that says, "Do not stop here, you were made to overcome." Obstacles often look bigger than they are because the mind magnifies them. Doubt makes us see a small challenge as a mountain, and a delay as a dead end, but faith brings clarity. It tells us that no mountain is too high, and no path is permanently blocked. Faith creates new vision where others only see roadblocks, and it opens doors where others only see walls. The power of faith is not just in making problems disappear, but in transforming the way we approach them. With faith, we stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What can I learn, and how can I grow through this?" Faith shifts entire perspective. Many times obstacles are tests of persistence. When dreams do not come easily, people are tempted to give up, but faith keeps the fire burning. It whispers to the heart that setbacks are not the end, but simply part of the journey. Faith gives us the determination to keep moving even when progress seems slow. It teaches us that the greatest victories often come after the greatest struggles, and that obstacles are not placed in our path to stop us, but to strengthen us for the future. Every person who has achieved something meaningful has had to climb over obstacles, and the one thing they carried with them was faith. Obstacles can also expose hidden strengths. Sometimes we do not know what we are capable of until life forces us to face a challenge. Faith gives us the courage to face those moments and discover the strength that was lying within it. Transforms obstacles into mirrors, showing us how much resilience and power we actually possess. Without obstacles, we would never grow. Without obstacles, we would never push beyond our comfort zones. And without faith, we would never have the confidence to believe that we can overcome them. Faith makes the impossible climb feel possible, and it turns resistance into fuel. Faith removes obstacles because it builds trust in outcomes that are not yet visible. When a door seems shut, faith reminds us that there may be another door waiting ahead. When resources seem scarce, faith says provision will come. When people doubt us, faith assures us that the vision placed inside us does not depend on their approval. Faith gives peace in the storm and clarity in the chaos, so that even when obstacles rise like waves, we do not sink, because faith becomes the anchor that holds us steady throughout history. Obstacles have been present in every story of greatness. Leaders faced opposition, inventors faced failure, athletes faced defeats. Yet what separated those who succeeded from those who quit was faith. They believed in something beyond the obstacle, and that belief gave them the strength to push through. If they had listened to fear or discouragement, their stories would have ended at the obstacle, but their faith carried them to the other side and made them examples for generations to follow. In daily life, obstacles may come in small or large forms. It may be the obstacle of finding the courage to speak up. It may be the obstacle of recovering from loss. It may be the obstacle of trying again after repeated failure. In all these cases, faith removes the weight of discouragement and replaces it with hope. Faith whispers tomorrow can be better. Faith declares you are stronger than you think. Faith keeps us from stopping at the obstacle and gives us energy to push forward step by step until breakthrough comes. So faith truly removes obstacles. It does not promise that life will be free of challenges, but it promises that no challenge will be too great to overcome. It teaches us to see obstacles as temporary, not permanent, and lessons, not punishments, as opportunities, not endings. With faith, every obstacle becomes smaller, every burden becomes lighter, and every setback becomes a setup for a greater comeback. Faith reminds us that obstacles are not meant to define us, they are meant to refine us. And once we understand this truth, nothing can stand in the way, because faith removes every obstacle that tries to block the path forward. Faith removes negativity, because negativity is like a cloud that blocks the light of possibility. It creeps into the mind through words we hear, through experiences we face, and even through the doubts we carry inside ourselves. Negativity says you cannot. Faith replies you can. Negativity says life is unfair. Faith answers life still has purpose. Negativity surrounds us in the form of criticism, discouragement, failures, and disappointments. Faith breaks through those shadows and reminds us that even in the darkest of times, light still exists and hope is never lost. Negativity often comes from the voices of others. When people project their fears and limitations onto us, they tell us our dreams are too big or our goals are unrealistic, and slowly those words can take root inside our hearts if we let them, but faith acts as a shield against those words. Faith refuses to allow the opinions of others to dictate what is possible. It builds confidence that the vision inside of us was placed there for a reason, and no amount of negativity can erase it. Faith gives us the strength to say, I will keep moving even when no one believes in me, because I believe in myself and I believe in what is guiding me. Negativity also comes from within through self-doubt and inner criticism. Sometimes we become our own greatest obstacle, repeating thoughts like I am not good enough or I will never succeed. These inner voices can be heavier than the words of others, but faith dismantles them one by one. Faith reminds us that we are capable, that we are worthy, and that we are stronger than the doubts in our mind. It gives us the ability to silence the inner critic and replace those thoughts with ones of courage, confidence, and determination. Life itself also presents negativity in the form of hardship, setbacks, and disappointments. When things do not go as planned, it is easy to fall into bitterness or hopelessness, but faith removes that heaviness by shifting perspective. It teaches that every challenge carries a lesson, every delay has a purpose, and every struggle builds strength. Negativity looks at failure and says this is the end. Faith looks at failure and says this is the beginning of something new and better. Faith transforms hardship into growth and reminds us that nothing is wasted when we continue to believe. Faith removes negativity by giving us a vision of what lies beyond the struggle. Negativity narrows our view and makes us focus only on the problem, but faith expands our sight and lets us see the bigger picture. It tells us that storms do not last forever and that the sun always returns. It allows us to keep walking even when the path looks dark, because we know light is waiting ahead. With this vision, negativity loses its grip because hope becomes stronger than despair. Another way faith removes negativity is by changing the environment of the heart. When negativity builds frustration and anger, faith brings peace and calm. When negativity creates hopelessness, faith fills the soul with resilience and joy. Faith becomes a filter through which we experience the world. It teaches us to focus not on what is wrong, but on what is possible, not on what is lost, but on what can still be gained. When the heart is filled with faith, negativity finds no space to stay. History proves this truth time and time again. The greatest leaders, inventors, and dreamers faced endless negativity. They were told it could not be done. They were laughed at, mocked, and criticized, but they chose faith over negativity and continued forward. Their faith not only protected their vision, but also inspired others to rise above the same negativity that once tried to stop them. If they had allowed negativity to win, the world would never have seen their contributions, but faith gave them victory over the voices of doubt and defeat in our own lives. Negativity may come from all directions, sometimes from the workplace, sometimes from friends, and sometimes even from family, but faith reminds us to hold on to the belief that what lies inside us is stronger than what comes against us. It allows us to walk through toxic environments without absorbing the poison. It gives us strength to rise every morning with a spirit of gratitude rather than a spirit of complaint. Faith transforms negativity into fuel that pushes us to keep striving for better. So faith truly removes negativity. It removes the dark clouds of doubt, the heavy weight of criticism, and the inner voices of defeat. It does not mean life will always be positive or easy, but it means negativity will never control us again. With faith, we rise above discouragement and choose determination. With faith, we silence criticism and choose confidence. With faith, we turn failures into lessons and choose resilience. Negativity may surround us, but it cannot live within us. When faith fills the heart and mind, for faith is stronger, louder, and brighter than every negative force in existence. Faith removes failure because failure is not the end of the road, but often the beginning of a new path. Yet many people see failure as final and allow it to define them. They stop trying because one attempt did not work. They give up on dreams because doors closed against them. They carry the weight of mistakes and call themselves failures. But faith changes that story. Faith teaches that failure is not a permanent identity, but a temporary experience. It is not a reason to stop, but a reason to keep moving. Faith gives meaning to failure by turning it into a lesson, a teacher, and a stepping stone towards something greater. When failure happens, it brings feelings of shame, disappointment, and hopelessness. The mind begins to ask questions like, what if I am not good enough? What if I never succeed again? But faith quiets those voices. Faith reminds us that no one who has ever achieved greatness did so without failing first. Every successful person has faced moments of defeat. Every inventor has faced countless failed experiments. Every dreamer has faced rejection, yet they kept going because faith told them failure is not the end but part of the process. Faith shifts the way we see mistakes. It tells us that falling does not mean we cannot rise, and that defeat is never permanent unless we decide to quit. Faith removes failure by planting resilience in the heart. It gives us the courage to try again. After falling, it says just because it did not work once does not mean it will never work. Faith fuels persistence, and persistence is the very thing that transforms failure into victory. Without faith, people let failure close doors, but with faith, doors are opened again and again until success finally walks in. Faith pushes us to continue where others stop, and that persistence makes all the difference. Failure often teaches us what success cannot. It reveals weaknesses that need to be strengthened. It shows strategies that need to be changed. It humbles us and prepares us for greater opportunities. Faith helps us embrace those lessons rather than reject them. Faith says, do not fear the lessons in failure because they are shaping you for the success you are destined for. When we trust this truth, failure becomes a friend that sharpens us instead of an enemy that destroys us. Faith also removes the stigma of failure because society often labels people by their mistakes, but faith removes that label. It tells us that our value does not decrease because we failed. Faith says we are worthy regardless of the outcome, and that our identity is not tied to results, but to resilience. This freedom allows us to take risks without the paralyzing fear of what others will think. Even if we fall, faith gives us the strength to rise again without shame. Throughout history, many of the world's greatest breakthroughs came after failure. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Walt Disney was told he lacked imagination. J.K. Rowling was rejected by multiple publishers before her work became loved worldwide. These stories prove that failure is not final. Faith is what kept these people moving forward. When the world said stop, faith refused to accept failure as destiny and turned their setbacks into setups for greatness. In our personal lives, we all face moments that feel like failure. It might be a business that did not succeed, an exam that was not passed, a relationship that ended, or a dream that seems delayed. But faith tells us that none of these failures are final. They are simply redirections towards something better. Faith gives peace in the storm and strength in the struggle, so that even when plans collapse, we can still rise stronger and keep believing in the possibility of tomorrow. Faith removes failure because it teaches us to see beyond the moment. Faith does not deny that falling hurts, but it assures us that pain can produce growth. Faith does not pretend that setbacks are easy, but it promises that they will not be wasted. Every failure becomes a seed planted for future success, and every disappointment becomes a lesson that will guide us into wisdom. Faith is the assurance that nothing is truly lost when we keep believing, because every fall has the power to launch a greater rise. So faith truly removes failure. It changes the definition of failure from something final to something temporary, from something negative to something useful, from something that destroys to something that builds. Faith does not allow us to sit in defeat, but pushes us to stand again. It removes the weight of the past and replaces it with the hope of a better future. With faith, failure no longer has the power to stop us, because we know that as long as we keep trying, as long as we keep believing, success will eventually come, and failure will be remembered not as the end, but as the turning point that led us to victory. Faith removes the impossible because the word impossible is often nothing more than a boundary created by human doubt and limited vision. Throughout history, countless things once labeled impossible have later become reality. Flight was once thought impossible until the Wright brothers proved it possible. Electricity was seen as impossible until it lit up the world. Cures for diseases, inventions of technology, and even the exploration of space all began with someone who refused to accept the word impossible. Faith is the power that erases those boundaries and opens doors that human reasoning alone could never unlock. When people see the impossible, they often stop trying because logic tells them it cannot be done. But faith is not bound by logic. It believes in possibilities that go beyond what the eyes can see, and the mind can calculate. Faith whispers keep going when logic says turn back. It gives the heart courage to pursue goals that look unreachable and dreams that seem too far away. Faith is not blindness, it is vision, a vision that sees beyond circumstances, beyond limitations, and beyond human understanding, to believe that the impossible can be achieved. The impossible often appears in our lives as challenges that seem too big to handle. It could be an illness that doctors say has no cure, a financial crisis that feels too deep to escape, a dream that looks too far to reach, or a relationship that appears too broken to mend. Yet faith rises in those very moments and says there is still a way. Faith does not deny reality, but it declares that reality can change. Faith sees healing where others see sickness. It sees provision where others see lack. It sees restoration where others see ruin, and it sees victory where others see defeat. Faith creates room for miracles. One of the greatest strengths of faith is that it changes the language of the heart. While doubt says it is impossible, faith responds all things are possible. It shifts the focus from what cannot be done to what can be done. Faith teaches us to stop measuring challenges by our own strength and to start trusting in a strength greater than ours. When we rely only on what we can see, impossibility is certain. But when we rely on faith, impossibility becomes temporary, because faith draws on power beyond human effort. Every person who has achieved greatness has faced moments that seemed impossible. The athlete who breaks records, the student who rises from poverty to success, the leader who changes the destiny of a nation. All of them faced walls that seemed too high to climb, but faith gave them courage to keep moving forward. It gave them vision to see beyond the wall and strength to break through it. Faith is the secret ingredient behind every impossible story that turned into a testimony of victory in daily life. We often face personal impossibility. It might be the impossible dream of starting a business with little resources. It might be the impossible hope of building a future after repeated failures. It might be the impossible fight of overcoming personal struggles and inner battles, but faith is the spark that keeps us trying. It tells us that no matter how hard it looks, the story is not finished yet. Faith says keep believing, keep working, keep moving, because the impossible today can become the reality of tomorrow. Faith also removes the impossible by teaching patience. Sometimes impossibility is not about whether something can happen, but about when it will happen. Impatience makes us believe that if it has not happened now, it will never happen, but faith reminds us that timing matters, that the impossible takes longer because it prepares us for something greater. Faith allows us to wait without losing hope, and to endure without losing vision, because it knows that delay does not mean denial. The impossible is only waiting for the right moment to unfold. What makes faith so powerful is that it is contagious. When one person believes in the impossible, it inspires others to believe too. History shows countless examples where one person's faith sparked a movement or gave courage to millions. Faith not only removes the impossible for the individual, but also for communities and generations to come. It proves that impossible is only temporary, and that belief has the power to change entire worlds. So faith truly removes the impossible. It transforms fear into courage, doubt into trust, and despair into hope. It teaches us that limits are meant to be challenged, and that impossibility is often the birthplace of miracles. With faith, there are no locked doors, only unopened ones. There are no dead ends, only turns waiting to be discovered. The impossible is not the end of the road, but the beginning of a new story. Faith makes the impossible possible, and with faith alive in the heart, there is truly nothing that cannot be overcome. Faith is the foundation that transforms our lives. It removes fear, doubt, limitations, obstacles, negativity, failure, and even the impossible. It is the quiet strength that carries us through storms, and the loud courage that pushes us to climb mountains. Faith does not promise that the road will always be easy, but it promises that no road is too difficult to walk. When belief guides our steps with faith, we rise above what tries to hold us down. With faith, we see hope. When others see despair, with faith, we discover strength we never knew we had, and with faith, we realize that nothing is truly beyond our reach. So let us walk boldly, let us dream without limits, and let us live with hearts full of faith, because when faith is alive within us, there is nothing we cannot overcome.